And as that the population ages, there are the other thing too is Prop 19, which passed, right? Which allows you to transfer your tax bases. So if somebody, sells their house for, $1.5 million, but their tax basis is only based on a $300,000 sales price from when they bought it. When they buy that next property, if they buy a house up to $1.5 million, their taxes are still based on the same as long as they're over 55.
Wow, that's huge.
And we don't know how long that's going to be around. I remember, I think it's Gus Kramer, who's like
Gus Kramer, and Otto Katrina.
Yeah, well, for Contra Costa County, he spoke. Gosh, man, that's going back a year or so, and he was saying, don't count on this always staying around, right? So people think, it's here to stay. Well, it's still, it can still change.
We're talking about Prop 19.
Prop 19. Yeah, but it's a tremendous benefit to have right now.
A couple of years ago, I had a seminar actually, and the reason I brought up Otto Katrina is because I had Otto and Gus both at the seminar, and we talked about Prop 19, and at that point, we weren't allowed. There were certain counties that were participating in Prop 19, but now that's not the case.
It's not the case. And the other thing too that's great is that, for example, where it's always been, like let's say in the past, if you bought in Contra Costa County and you sold your house for $1.5 million, let's say, you could, as long as you bought down, you could transfer your tax basis. Now Prop 19 allows you. And there's only, like you said, there's only a couple of participating states. They've since changed that where now it's statewide,
Wow.
So for example, you could have somebody that's selling their house in San Ramon or Danville. And let's say they want to be by the grandbabies and their kids couldn't afford to buy in the area. Maybe they bought up in El Dorado Hills, right? They could sell their house, transfer their tax basis up there. And in some instances, we'll get people where maybe they buy a more expensive home. That's possible. In that case, they can still transfer their tax basis. They just pay the difference in the extra amount.
But they could buy something less than what they own.
Yeah, they can certainly buy less in any county.
Wow, that's huge. I mean, there's so many amazing things. I wish people knew them. A lot of realtors don't know about them, right?
It's really funny. It's funny you say that. I was just talking to a realtor yesterday, and he was talking about the inventory. And I go, gosh, if that bill passes and, with Prop 19, and he's like, what bill? Prop 19. And I'm like, okay.
No, not everyone knows.
Yeah,
and that's what shocks me.
Yeah.
And speaking of realtors, as the market's changing and shifting, I have a lot of realtors and mortgage brokers who are kind of coming to me and asking me like, Ruhi, what do we do? I mean, we've been in the business so long. And frankly, they've only been in the business the last 10 years.
Right.
They've only seen a good market.
Exactly.
So what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think to your point, right? For somebody that can be in the business for 10 years, and this is the first they've seen a down market, that really speaks to the strength of the housing market.
Yeah.
But the key word there is it's still a market. Markets go up and down, right? And we're just starting to see the downturn. Yes, when it comes to interest rates, it's been a little bit more significant in terms of the increase. But, things still go up and down.
Yeah.
And what I always advise people, especially like the newer agents, is, you want to kind of stay within your means, right? And I know a lot of my colleagues, things are slow right now. And I said, hey, you had a really good years the last 2 years. If you haven't prepared for this, it's going to make things really tough on you going forward. Yep. So it's just really kind of staying within your means and just, budgeting accordingly because, that things change and you have to be able to adapt.
That was one of the first things I learned when I started in the business. It was either feast or it was famine, right? I always say that now when I coach, I say it's feast or famine. Save for 6 months. How long do you save for?
It's really hard to say. I mean, 6 months probably at least.
Yeah.
But it's funny you say that because I was talking with a colleague the other day and they said, I was like, what's really hard in this business is to find that happy medium, right? And what's funny is you don't think about it until afterwards. You're like, wow, that was a perfect time where it was like, I was just busy enough. I wasn't overwhelmed. And, you've reached that point, but it's kind of like the way they look at like recessions now. They have to kind of go back and look at it.
Yeah.
Were we in a recession? Were we not in a recession? It's kind of that same thing. It's like, what's that ideal balance between being, not too busy and it's just hard to find that balance.
No, it's so hard. I think a lot of us, I think of it as a huge blessing,
right.
Being busy, but I'm spoiled. I mean, I'm used to having so many clients at a time. Right. And when I only have one or two clients, I kind of feel like I'm over babying them. Yeah. And they're wondering, why does she keep on calling us? Why does she keep on updating us? And I'm kind of thinking, well, my business and as your business, right. it's all referral based.
It's all referral. Yeah.
We depend on those referrals.
Well, and I think the thing too that's important is we're also kind of in the education business too, yes. right? And, sometimes, getting a loan, it's more than just what's the rate, right? How do things, does this tie into your lifestyle? Is this something, yes. You don't want to, be completely beholden to your mortgage. It's hard to do that nowadays with the rates higher. Yeah. And that's why you find people that are still buying within their means and knowing that they could qualify for more. And I'll have that conversation all the time. They're like, hey, we still want to be able to go to dinner, right? We still want to be able to vacation.
Yeah,
right?
100%. 100%.
So it's just balance is important.
100%. And the one thing I really, really appreciate about you specifically, Gerald, when I work with you, your integrity and your honesty is so awesome, but you also involve the CPA and you involve kind of like their whole financial circle just to make sure that things make sense for the clients.
Without a doubt. And the thing the reason that's so important is, you take like your older client, right? And they're sitting on this windfall from the sale of their property. What is the optimal way to do that?
Yeah.
And they might think, I just want to pay cash for my house. Maybe that's the case, right? But maybe we're in a situation where maybe the stock market's on an upswing. They talk with their financial person. They go, you know what? You don't need to pay cash for that house. You can do, I know it's gotten a bad name in the past, but it's much more transparent now is a reverse mortgage, right? Where you don't have a payment. And people always think it's a reverse mortgage is associated with, a refinance, which it usually is, but you can do a reverse mortgage purchase. You could sell your house with this windfall, right?
Yeah.
Transfer your tax basis. And if maybe you weren't fortunate enough to really plan extremely well for your retirement, you can turn around and do a reverse purchase and still pocket all this money that now you can kind of gain all that over time by having this extra large sum of money potentially to go ahead and invest.
You're going to have to educate me more on that because I've always thought the same thing, right? Reverse mortgage is kind of like if you don't think you've got many years left and you're kind of, but you're educating me that that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, some people even get them nowadays. We're doing one for somebody right now. Their house is free and clear.
Wow.
And they're like, well, the kids are getting older. We want to be able to kind of spoil the grandkids a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe help with their education. And they're getting, like kind of like an equity line on their house.
Oh, wow.
And they, they're approved up to a certain amount and they're able to take that money out and never make a payment, But keep in mind, of course, that a reverse mortgage is kind of what it sounds like, right? They're not making a payment. That payment's getting added to their balance every month. So it's important to understand how they work and how that balance, accrues over time, because that's something they need to be prepared for.
So if equity goes up on the property and they've got a negative balance accruing, could they refinance and possibly not owe anything?
They could. I would advise against that because the one thing about reverse mortgages is that they're very front loaded. So there's more costs associated with them up front.
Okay.
So it's not something like, hey, I can refinance your loan and pay all of your closing costs and do all these other things that we could on a more traditional mortgage, right? There's a lot of upfront costs. Okay. So you don't want to, you don't want to do it too many times.
No, that's good information. I mean, I'm always, those pieces of advice and that education on different bills and props, and I think it's huge. And I always say it really is important who you work with. Who you work with matters. And, you could work with, there's a ton of realtors, there's a ton of mortgage brokers, but if you align yourself with the wrong person, you could be in some serious trouble, or you could just end up leaving a lot of money on the table.
Yeah. Well, I think I've always viewed things as kind of a team approach. We're all working together towards the common goal of helping a particular person buy or sell, their house. And when you're working with somebody in that team approach, it makes things so much easier and cohesive to be able to do that. And, it just starts with, sometimes things pop up on a file. Yeah. And the worst thing that's happened is, and I'm sure you've experienced this, right? Something goes sideways on a deal and you call your lender and they're like, oh my God, it's like, you can't find them, right? It's, they're on a milk carton somewhere, right? So, but I've always, I try not to let that happen, but it does on occasion. And when it does, to me, that's your opportunity as a lender to shine in the sense of, how are we going to solve this? Get everybody involved. This is what happened. This is how we're going to fix it. And we're going to be okay, But when things go sideways, and then you can't get that person on the phone and it just heightens everybody's anxiety.
Trust me, I've worked with enough people where I'm the listing agent and the buyer's got their own lender and they come in, and I've had lenders hang up on me because I'm trying to protect my client and kind of ask the questions that my client isn't savvy enough to ask just because they haven't done too many real estate transactions. And their lender literally hangs up on me. And I'm like, what? We should have the same interest for, the person we're representing. And I've had clients apologize to me for how their lenders have been. I'm like, look, just like this market, when something shifts, you need to learn to pivot.
Right.
If you can't pivot, guess what? You're in the wrong business.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm proud to say I've never hung up on a realtor.
I know you haven't. You're
30
awesome.
years.
No,
I've had a phone disconnected. That might be as bad cell reception. It wasn't on purpose. So.
No.
But no, it's you're right though. It's just a matter of you got to work together.
Yeah.
It just makes things so much easier. It does make the process much easier to do that. And the other thing too is, and sometimes I'll have agents where they're like, hey, can you talk to this person? They already have a lender, right? And most of the time, those conversations are just more kind of double checking and everybody's kind of put at ease. And I have no problem telling them, hey, you know what? The deal that they're offering you is a great deal. You need to take it. And it makes them feel comfortable because it provides, validity that, they know that they're getting a good deal. And on occasion, I'll have something where I'm like, I don't think I would do it that way. And they go, what do you mean? I go, what about if you do it this way? Give them a few different steps. And they go, oh, that's a really good idea. Now sometimes they take that back to the lender and so be it. But you got to be free with the advice, in my opinion. It's not protected. You kind of put it out there and you get it back in other ways.
I can't tell you how many times, how many times I've called you and said, hey, Daryl, what do you think? Even though you're not representing them, you've always kind of been very straight with me. Yeah. And you've actually offered to speak to my clients, which I so appreciate. Because honestly, it's that honest advice and you're always looking out for them. I think that's what makes you successful.
Well, and again, and you'll see it too. You'll get the same thing as a realtor, right? Where somebody will ask you a question. You're like, you're not sitting here protecting that information. It's like, no, I think this is what you should do.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
And just by putting it out there, you want to be that resource for people, right? And you're not going to get every deal, And one of the things that some lenders try to be, and it's impossible, you can't be everything to everybody, right?
Yes.
I might have somebody where they're like, hey, I really want a 5-1 arm or a 7-1 arm, which for the public, means that it's a 30-year loan, but you get this below market rate for that 5-year or 7-year period. That might be a terrible loan for somebody depending on the circumstances. Yeah. But I'll have people where I'll talk with them and I'll go, you know what, that's a good deal. You need to take that, right? Or maybe, consider this other type of loan and here's the reasons why. It's just a matter of education.
I know. I think it's very important. And I think just being straight and direct with people is so huge. And so I so appreciate you taking the time and, just sharing all your wonderful insight. And I'm hoping, and I haven't asked you this already, but I'm hoping we can make this a regular kind of banter where we can kind of share with our audiences questions they may have. And thank you again. I will.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you like this video and the content we're putting out, be sure to like and subscribe. And hopefully we will see a lot more of Daryl with Diversified Capital Funding.